All right, so a big talking point this time around has been territorial disputes in the South China Sea. Let's try and find out more perspective on where the story is really moving between the U.S. and China, as there's been a lot of talk about the South China Sea. We're still joined here in our studios by Lieutenant Colonel Zhang Junshi, Vice President of the China Naval Research Institute. Colonel Zhang, you heard Hillary Clinton just a moment ago saying what the U.S. has said quite a few times in the past, that they don't take sides in the South China Sea dispute. My question to you is, why does China not believe that? What is it that you feel the U.S. has done in terms of actions in the last few months and weeks, which leads you to believe that the U.S. is not a neutral outside party to this?
Well, the United States has stated officially and publicly many times that it doesn't take sides in the territorial dispute between China and its neighboring countries. But actually, many Chinese don't believe in Americans' words, because many events in the past 2 or 3 years, or even this year, show that the United States has meddled in this dispute and has interfered in this dispute, because they provided military assistance to the Philippines and Vietnam and other countries which have sovereignty dispute with China, and also held numerous military exercises with these claimant countries. And these claimant countries said publicly that the United States is supporting them in their dispute with China.
But the U.S. says that most of these military exercises, in fact all of these military-to-military exercises, are routine exercises and has nothing to do with China's own territorial disputes with these Southeast Asian countries in the South China Sea.
But the United States chose those countries which have territorial disputes with China to have conducted so many military exercises, but at the same time, or in the same period, they held none with China.
What about when the Secretary of State says that it's in China's interest to wrap up this code of conduct in the South China Sea? China and ASEAN countries have been talking about this for almost 10 years now. Why is this so difficult to finalize and conclude? After all, it will help lower tensions in on this whole question.
I think this question, we should look at this point, that China has exercised great restraint ever since we signed the declaration on the conduct of parties in the South China Sea. But some claimant countries or some parties didn't keep their promise. For example, the Philippines and Vietnam, they have kept making a provocation against China. For the Vietnam part, they have passed the so-called legislation, which claim as its own China's islands, islets, and waters. And the Philippines claim the hu-xia Island, which has been China's inherent territory ever since ancient times, as its own. And also it sent naval warships to harass the Chinese fishermen and threaten the Chinese fishermen. All these show that these countries have not abided by the dock. And China is willing to work out a COC with these countries, but first the condition is not appropriate, and the conditions are not appropriate.
What about America's whole rebalancing strategy, moving a bulk of its naval warships to the Pacific? America says the only reason they're doing that is because for the last 10 years their priorities have been in the Middle East, in wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, chasing Al-Qaeda. And now that those wars are winding down, they have to move those forces somewhere. And when they look around the world, the only place where they see potential conflicts or potential reason for America's influence is the Asia-Pacific.
Well, the United States plans to deploy over 60% of its naval warships and submarines in the Asia-Pacific region by 2020. To many Chinese, this rebalancing strategy in the Asia-Pacific region is aimed at containing China's rise, because many Americans think that China has expanded its influence in this region during the period when the United States was focused on the war on terror. But actually, China didn't do so. And many Americans think that the sovereignty dispute is a good tool for the United States to counterbalance China's influence. So they are urging some countries to make provocations against China. That's the Chinese perspective.
All right, Colonel Zhang, stay on with us. We'll be talking with you more about another issue as well, and China's relations with another country, not as contentious or controversial as its relations with the United States.